This is a fascinating subject, and I don't think we know enough about this. Why and how sound heals the body? Well, we know that cacophony, terrible sounds like a chalk screeching on the blackboard, that doesn't do anything good for us, obviously. Or we hear a nice piece of music, classical music, or a very nice hymn that soothes us and gives us peace and lifts us. It's two different things. Now, what produces the healing power of sound? We can feel it when we turn on the radio to our favorite song, and when it happens to be playing, and we're sitting quietly listening to the rain. Or I personally love listening to the waves of a beach. Or if I'm sitting in front of a fireplace, the crackling of a fire, beautiful. Now, there's a palpable peace when we're absorbing quiet and different kinds of rejuvenation. When we hear the wind in the trees, there's no doubt that sound has subtle but profound effects on our body, minds, and spirits. How exactly does sound work, though, to heal us? Have you ever listened to an orchestra preparing to play an invigorating symphony? What happens beforehand? They're all trying their instruments together. It's a huge cacophony. First with the woodwinds and the strings and the horns and the drums making rackets. But when they tune their instruments precisely, the sound that washes over you like a wave can bring peace and excitement that surpasses some of the most invigorating practices on earth, like, skydiving or dropping 45 feet into the middle of a cave. Now, sound is not unorganized chaos. It's a dynamic but ordered pattern, according to Dr. Hans Jenny. The body works in much the same way. If a single instrument, organ or organ system, is playing its own tune and not in harmony with the rest of the body, disease is more likely to happen. A sound therapist, Dr. John Beaulieu, PhD, explains, the fundamental principle of energy medicine is that an underlying energy field generates physical, emotional, and mental behaviors or symptoms, and if we change the energy field, the physical, emotional, and mental behaviors will also change. And we have an example of the waves, the sound waves, how they change the patterns of the sand. The cymatics, one of the most effective ways to change the energy field, is through a science named cymatics. And though he was not the first to discover that sound could heal, this is going back to antiquity that they knew this, Dr. Hans Jenny, MD of Basel, Switzerland, put together some fascinating experiments where we could literally see how sound works. Jenny created cymatics when he put sand, fluid, or some other powder on a metal plate that was attached to an oscillator. An oscillator is essentially a vibrator, but his oscillator was controlled by a generator that was able to produce many thousands of types of frequencies. Some of these can be found in nature and others are created by man. By changing the frequencies on the oscillator, Jenny found that sand or water or whatever substance he was using to create the visible medium for his sound would morph into some very interesting shapes. And these shapes mimicked the properties of divine geometry, and the higher the frequency, the more complex the shapes would appear to be. And he wrote, since the various aspects of these phenomena are due to vibration, we are confronted with a spectrum which reveals a patterned, figurative formation at one pole and kinetic dynamic processes at the other, the whole being generated and sustained by its essential periodicity. What Jenny was observing was really a simple way of observing matter come to life. Since we now understand, through the emerging field of quantum physics, that patterns emerge via waves of energy, the plates were showing the scientists a similar phenomenon in ancient Sumerian society. This was known as fact. This is why practices like mantra were held in high esteem. The seed symbol Om, for example, causes a certain frequency to imprint upon the matter around it and thus change the energetic field. The kind of singing that we do calms the spirit and helps us live in peace with our world and with one another. This is what Abbot Philip Lawrence, scholar of chant who also leads the Monastery of Christ in the Desert, home to an American order of Benedictine monks from Abbey Kiki in New Mexico, says. Chanting has some strange effects on the brain, waves, according to various studies. This is what Abbot Philip says. But this effect is certainly not the monks of the desert's objective. Rather, their goal, and that of the Gregorian chant, says Abbot Philip, is to focus on the words rather than the challenge of voice production or sight reading. Yes, because the words that you hear and you understand what they mean have a soothing effect on your soul. It lifts you. Let's remember what the ancients used to say: music soothes the savage beast. And remember what the young David, who wrote the Psalms of the Old Testament, he was called to play and recite the Psalms on his psalter, which is like a little harp, like those little Celtic harps that they lean on their thigh as they sit and they play them. They're like a stringed harp. That's called a psalter, and that's what the young David used to sing his hymns to the king Saul, who was demon-possessed. And that's the only way that Saul could find peace, is to hear the music and hear the words. Now, going back to this, it's always our hope that our singing will bring others to peace. Abbot Philip said, inner tranquility and the appreciation of beauty, these values can help create a world in which peace and tranquility prevail. Now, since all matter is just different frequencies of the collapsed wave or quantum field, then we have the ability to create a different reality with sound. Now, sound and the golden number. The possibility of great healing can be seen in the science of sound. The picture of the mandala created by sound, said to be imaged by a yogi in deep meditation, is a representation of one of the oldest sounds in the world. Some call it a manifestation of divine sound. The triangles that appear in the Sri Yantra, the mandala, are perfectly integrated based on the divine number pi, which is also the basis for the golden mean, phi. The Greek philosopher Pythagoras understood sound and divine geometry, and it's written about the Euclidean elements around 300 BC by Luci Pacioli, a contemporary of Leonardo da Vinci, in De Divina Proportione, in 1509 by Johann Kepler around 1600. Many others knew of this cosmic mathematics and its power to heal throughout the ages. The harmonics of sound work to create order out of chaos. The harmonics of sound work to create order out of chaos. Disease, you might say, is a form of chaos in the body. According to Dr. Robert Friedman, the connection between the golden ratio and ideal health was no-brainer. During his medical residency in the 1980s, Dr. Friedman began observing the golden ratio throughout the human body, on the anatomical, physiological, and molecular levels. Friedman said, "The deeper I looked, the more deeply I discovered this incredible and ubiquitous code to be embedded throughout the structure and function of the body. It only followed that the more one could harmonize with this grand principle, the more efficient and effortless life could be." And what about healing frequencies? What is illness? Emotional issues that are unresolved block the healing vibrations or cause a disease state to return, R. Gordon says, and they're like a crack in a perfect quartz crystal. Over millennia, those who have studied the science of sound have come to understand that certain frequencies are very healing for the human body. Overall, however, you are trying to create resonance. When two systems are oscillating at different frequencies, there is an impelling force called resonance that causes the two to transfer energy from one to the other. And when two similarly tuned systems vibrate at different frequencies, there's another aspect of this energy transfer called entertainment, which causes them to line up and to vibrate at the same frequency, according to Richard Gordon. Certain frequencies are very healing for the body. When we entrain with healing frequencies, our bodies and mind vibrate in harmony. And these include 285 Hz, signals cells and tissues to heal, leaves the body feeling rejuvenated. At 396 Hz, liberates guilt and fear to make way for higher vibrating emotions. At 717 Hz, allows the undoing of challenging situations. At 528 Hz, it's said to heal DNA, repair cells, and awaken consciousness. At 693 Hz, this is the vibration associated with the heart. It allows feelings of love for self and others until there is no longer a distraction. To balance relationships and listen to this frequency. At 741 Hz, it's said to clean the cells and heal them from exposure to electromagnetic radiation, helps shift someone into empowerment so that they can create the reality they wish to see. 852 Hz awakens intuition. 963 Hz activates the pineal gland and aligns the body to its perfect original state, of course. There are further frequencies, many of which are not even within the human range of hearing, but they are healing nonetheless. George Lakovsky, a Russian engineer, understood the power of sound as well. He understood that certain frequencies would make a living being grow stronger. I hope you are able to find healing in the frequencies I've described, and that's the introduction to why sound heals will spur you to learn more. Quote, "At the root of all power and motion, there is music and rhythm, the play of patterned frequencies against the matrix of time. We know that every particle in the physical universe takes its characteristic from the pitch and pattern and overtones of its particular frequencies. It's singing. And before we make music, music makes us." This is a quote from Johann Ernst Berendt, "The World is Sound." This is by Christina Sarek, Waking Times, and it's on Humans Are Free Creative Commons. If you'd like to join me on my Patreon account, you will hear content not covered by mainstream media. These riveting stories will be based on my research, and I will state my opinions and give my personal insight on diverse and controversial subjects and world events not covered by mainstream media, and not supported by YouTube guidelines. So whatever I have on my Patreon, most of those will not be on my YouTube channel. Please consider becoming a member today. More of the most significant and important videos will be on my Patreon channel. Your support helps me to continue my research and keeps this YouTube channel alive. And we depend on your support, your generous charity, because we help economically challenged families here in Athens, Greece, in Kapota, and we also help the young generation with university tuition and the community around our church. Thank you.